One of the tools that we use, not only in clinical social work, but also in our educational components of Shatter Our Silence, is we talk about the emotional health continuum. We primarily will focus on this idea of the continuum, as I've mentioned many times before, of at the far end to the left is lightness, which represents love, hope, and joy, and at the far right represents a hopelessness, a despair, a feeling, a sense that I just don't want to be here anymore, and that maybe my life would be better off if it didn't exist. People will ask many times about that continuum, specifically to the right, or toward the darkness, and we've broken that down into steps that lead to that darkness. That we all have experienced at one time or another, and the words that I use to describe those steps are probably less important than what comes up when you hear those words. So imagine if you're in the middle of that continuum and you move one step to the right or toward that darkness and experience sadness. Now, we've all experienced sadness for different things things that didn't happen the way we wanted, or a breakup, or whatever it may be. We've all experienced that sadness, and that's a normal aspect of doing life. The next step is this experience of feeling depressed. And that doesn't mean necessarily clinical depression, but a little bit more than sadness is this feeling that lingers a little bit longer, a little bit deeper, what we call being depressed or depression. Again, not the clinical depression that would lead to needing to get professional help. And we've all had some aspect of experiencing that as well. The next step, or the third step, is the sense of hopelessness. So if we stay in the sense of depressed for too long, that then what ends up happening is that we feel that this is never going to change. This sense of a hopelessness, that this is always going to be how it is, or it'll never get better. And without assistance, without some type of movement, if we stay in the state of hopelessness, then we start moving into the next step, which is referred to as death ideation. And death ideation is an aspect or a state of mind that I would just rather not wake up. Or if something happened to me, well, maybe that's a good alternative versus the emotional and physical pain that I'm in currently. Death ideation does not mean that a person wants to take their own life. They would just hope or magically want something to end their life. And that's what we refer to as death ideation. But inevitably, if someone stays in that state for too long, without getting assistance, without doing something about that, we tend to move toward taking matters into our own hands, and that next step is suicidal ideation. And so now that death ideation has now developed into someone start considering that maybe I need to take my own life. There's not a plan yet, the intent is maybe low, but is now transitioned away from wanting something to magical happen to considering that maybe I have to take matters into my own hands. As you stay in that step, that intent may grow without intervention, and as that intent grows, inevitably someone will start looking at developing a plan, which is another step toward that darkness. And that plan, and many times individuals are in this step, they know how they would do it, and they also are very clear on how they wouldn't take their own life. So that's not unusual at all. But we know that the risk now has become even greater, that someone may impulsively act on that. But when they're in this step, and they've now, in the last stage, have then secured means to activating that plan, we know that that individual is at greatest risk of attempting or completing a suicide. And so we know that we have to medically intervene at that time, get them into a safe environment, a safe place, so that they will no longer be engulfed in that darkness. and that we can then infuse them with some type of assistance, and that could be a variety of different things, but we know that we need to get them into a safe place that can have outside resources coming in and helping intervene with their thinking and their state of being at that time period. And so these different steps, as you can see, going into the darkness, each one of these steps get more and more severe and more dark as we move to that far right. The thing that I've experienced throughout my career and throughout my life is that anywhere on this continuum, there can be some type of intervention, some type of an individual can come in and break through that darkness, because we believe wholeheartedly that light will always penetrate darkness. And that darkness can never engulf that light. It's just continue to be persistent about being able to seek that out and being open to that.